Hi everyone, just wanted to give my thoughts on Dalia Rodriguez's article, Unmasking Identity, Healing Our Wounded Souls. So I thought this was a really fascinating article written by a woman who um, talks all about the reasons that women, especially women of color, should become writers, should get in touch with their voice, and should resist the white patriarchy and colonialism that tells them that they're not good enough or makes them have a lot of negative feelings about themselves. And so Rodriguez points out, some of the ways that women, especially women of color, mask themselves. And, I can see this as sometimes it could be trying to, fit in and trying to not cause problems. But also, when we have certain situations where the dominant ideas, right, don't reflect your lived experiences, then we're no longer talking about trying to wear a mask at work, or a mask when you go out in public, because you're not really being true to yourself, right? So it makes sense that women of color would face a lot of stress and lack of understanding of their own self-worth and who they are when they feel like they exist in a world where um, people are constantly judging them or looking for reasons to find fault. Um, Rodriguez brings up critical race theory and how sometimes race is used to kind of group people together, right? And based on whether or not they all have the same beliefs or same experiences or not, right? Race is seen as something that is important, that should be talked about. And the only way we can really understand experiences are from the people who have lived them. So I could see this as a teacher in school, when we have historical figures or when we're learning about famous people, oftentimes they are white men, right? We don't always provide opportunities to learn about women and women of color and their contributions. And I thought it was interesting how Rodriguez brings up that women, in the workplace or women in their lives kind of exist and sometimes as seen as trying to fight that oppression, right? So if you go into a workplace, maybe people think like, oh, because they're black, they are going to cause problems, right? But the reality is, because someone who is different from you maybe pointing out situations that are inequitable, that are taking advantage, that are oppressive. And so this idea that women and women of color should try to fit into the patriarchy, especially the system here in the US, that assumes that that is a good system. So how Rodriguez also mentions Bell Hooks saying that the only way to really rewrite our future is, instead of trying to fit into that white hegemony patriarchy, kind of coming up with your own idea of self and your own idea of what it looks like to be a part of a community, right? We don't necessarily need to find others' faults and find ways for others to fail in order for us to succeed. Some of the ideas about using narratives reminds me of the narratives that we've read about, and it's hard to refute a narrative because it is someone's opinion, it is their experience, right? Data can be manipulative, but someone's narrative is very cathartic, it's healing. Also, it provides more awareness, right? If there are not a lot of resources where you can hear others' points of view, then creating those resources, right? Creating more works whether it's to be shared or even just a way is to heal, using it as writing, like as writing therapy. In terms of Rodriguez's comments about Chicana feminist theories, it's also interesting looking at the power struggle dynamics, right? This helps me understand some of the dynamics of play in education and what female teachers and students may be experiencing. And just the, there are multifaceted ways that someone might experience oppression. It could be skin color, gender, class, bilingualism, immigration, migration, and English proficiency. So, we may not always think of all these different facets when we talk about equity, when we talk about equal access, and trying to narrow the achievement gap. When Rodriguez talks about the ballet shoes and whether or not, right, the child should be able to dance, is kind of interesting because the stories that she's telling, it is making you think of these, of your own experiences, right? And so I think by sharing these narratives, I think it helps you to connect with that experience. And maybe, you haven't had the same one, but I think it can sort of make people more aware of policies and practices that would be able to benefit people that are different than you. Because if you don't know anything about other people, then you have no way to make sure that they have a seat at the table, right? So I appreciated Rodriguez's comments about safe spaces and self-empowerment, right? This is kind of like having a room of one's own and feeling like you, belong in a place and that you can gain that independence. And I thought it was cool how she also mentions just like things that you can do to remind yourself of what you've accomplished and how strong you are. And that your struggles aren't necessarily like weighing you down, but it's also, part of what helps you to resist colonialization, part of what helps you to fight through that struggle and pain. So thank you for listening. Have a good night.